Yeah, this is not going to be a serious video at all, so sorry. Yeah, that's good. Hello, and welcome to the first video in what I hope is going to be a long, extensive playlist series of videos where I make clothing and you watch me make clothing for me. It's kind of weird when I say it out loud. YouTube is a weird place. Why do we do this? I wanted to make a vest. I've made a lot of vests before, and I figured that I would show you guys how I make my vests. I made this one single-breasted, so it'll be really nice. It's a style suited more towards the 1840s and 50s. In the 1840s, plaid, I guess it went back even to the 1830s, the beginning of the Victorian era, plaid was amazing. Everybody loved it. They had this obsession with plaid. It started in England because plaid is used primarily in what country, boys and girls? Scotland! Scotland, yes, that's right. Plaid tartan, as it's called, is from Scotland, and each tartan is like, think of it like the banner of a family, like a family crest, but it's a type of plaid, a different pattern of plaid for each family or each clan. And so England was, for some reason, really interested in this, probably because Queen Victoria liked to go up to Scotland and she took her husband up there, and they spent a lot of time up there in Scotland. And so what the royalty does, the rest of the people do as well. And so, hey, our queen has this interest in Scotland and all things Scottish. And this even extended over into America. And by the 1840s, of course, America was its own country and was prospering very nicely. Go USA. It got to the point where plaid was in everything. It wasn't just waistcoats. It was pants. It was coats. It got obnoxious. Very obnoxious. Plaid was everywhere. Tartan was everywhere. There were books published about what kind of tartan you should wear and which tartan came from which clan and which were appropriate to wear during what time of day, what time of season, what time of year for events. Everybody loved it. By the 1850s, that fad had kind of gone away. Although plaid stuck around in trousers, but primarily in waistcoats. So I wanted to have a plaid waistcoat as well, because no mid-19th century wardrobe is complete for a gentleman unless he has a plaid waistcoat. Now, my plaid is not necessarily reminiscent of any particular tartan. I have no Scottish or English blood in me at all. I am almost entirely German, but I like plaid, so we're gonna go with it, and it's not connected to any tartan, so I claim no heritage. The material that my vest, that my waistcoat or waistcoat is made of is cotton. Cotton during the 1840s and 50s was coming into fashion. Some people didn't like it, particularly if they could still afford linen. Linen was the choice. If you were cool, you would wear linen. I am not cool. I don't wear linen. I wear cotton. Cotton was particularly popular in America because the economy of the South, the product of the South, was cotton and tobacco. That's what they had. So that's what we wore. I, being American, will wear cotton. Support your local industries. In terms of historical accuracy, I wanted to keep this as close as possible, except when it came to the sewing. Now, I am able to hand sew. I can do it. Whether or not I have the patience for it is another story. There is some hand sewing on this vest, but it's not entirely hand sewn. The vast majority of it, particularly in the big seams, is machine sewn. Now, there were some sewing machines in the mid-19th century, but they weren't very popular, so a lot of stuff was still sewn by hand. I am not going for historical authenticity. Authenticity. I'm not going for historical authenticity in that department. I'm going for practicality. And because I make these clothes for myself to wear just about every day, I don't want to waste time hand sewing everything when I don't have to. My machine is perfectly good. It makes a perfectly good garment, so I'm just going with that. If you guys want me to do a completely historically accurate hand sewn garment, let me know and I'll maybe make a video of it. So I'm using almost entirely cotton. However, the back of the vest is linen. The front is a printed cotton. Now, printed fabrics were coming around in the mid-19th century. It was a thing. So it is historically accurate to have a printed plaid. So linen back, printed cotton front. The interlining is just a cotton canvas along with some cotton wadding in the chest. You'll see me put all those in later. And I also made the lining of a very nice Egyptian cotton. It's a funny story. It's literally a bed sheet. I used a bed sheet, like a king size bed sheet, for the lining of the fabric, for the lining fabric. Now the fabric I'm using is a plaid that is made of a lovely brown and black and gray and yellow, and there's even a little bit of green in there that I didn't notice until my wife pointed it out to me. Now I am pinning the front piece of the waistcoat to the fabric so I can cut it out. Now this pattern that I'm using is based off of an original from the late 1840s. It was made to fit someone who is much smaller and shorter than I am, so it is meant to be a double-breasted waistcoat, but I found that it's actually easier if I make it single-breasted for myself. You'll see here that I'm actually extending the bottom of the waistcoat to be a bit longer. I am 6 foot 4 inches, and if I were to leave the waistcoat in its original length, it would not nearly be long enough. But we don't want to make it too long, because waistcoats of this time still ended at the natural waist, which is just below the ribs. I would like to interrupt here and say that I hate doing pockets, and I always will. So yeah, these pockets now that I'm making actually turned out really well. In fact, I think they're some of the best pockets that I've ever made, maybe. They're pretty good. Unfortunately, I never ended up getting any footage of the creation of the pockets. However, here you can see me working on the under collar for the waistcoat. Now the under collar is sort of like an outer lining that is underneath the outer collar. I'm using a gray linen here, which is the same type of fabric that I will be using to make the outside of the back of the waistcoat later on in the video. Once the undercollar is sewn in place, I need to make sure that the canvas interlining is the right shape to match up with our outer fabric. I put darts in both the canvas interlining and the outer fabric to make sure that they match up perfectly. Once I check on that, I sew the canvas undercollar onto the interlining to make sure that that part fits as well. When that is secured, I baste the interlining onto the outer fabric. From there, it's just a matter of repeating the same steps on the other side. Now, usually, somewhere in all of these steps, I would have worked on the cotton wadding that goes inside the chest area, but at this point, I had forgotten about it. However, later on, I'll remember it, and you'll see me put it in. Now we get to the first bit of actual hand sewing that I do. Now that I have the lining and the outer fabric of the front together, I'm going to fold in the insides around the armpit area, what's called the arm's eye. and I'm going to do a fell stitching. It's a little bit like a whipping stitch, but it's meant to be almost invisible, at least from one side. So you won't be able to see it on the outside. You can see it a little bit on the inside, but not at all on the outside.
It is 10:30 at night. I cannot sleep, so I'm going to sew.
Another section of the waistcoat that I forgot to film the making of was the inside front lining. Now, the front lining includes the outer collar. The outer collar is what's seen folded over when the waistcoat is finished. But right now I'm working on sewing the two arm's eye sections together of the lining and the outer front fabric.
Once that's all done, I have to start making the padding. Now, I almost forgot the padding of this vest, and it would have been okay. Not all vests at the time had padding, but if you use padding in the chest, you really get that nice mid-19th century silhouette. So I like to have padding. Now, because it's a summer vest, I only used a couple layers of the wadding. It's completely 100% cotton, so still sticking with the historical authenticity of natural fibers. And I did a pad stitch on both of them. Now, pad stitching is not necessary on the wadding because there's no real need for a curve. Pad stitching became popular in the 19th century when interfacing started to be used for lapels and collars and cuffs as well. So they would use pad stitching to help kind of create that roll that we see on the lapels and in the collars. And so that pad stitching sort of created this tension. It's kind of like a zigzag spiral in and out of the fabric, and it creates a bridge and tension that causes the fabric to curve like that. And so it's really helpful if you have stiff interfacing and you need that to curve because it won't curve by itself. Now, I didn't use any stiff interfacing in the lapels, so I don't need to do any serious pad stitching around there. However, I do like to do just a little bit of wide, broad pad stitching on the pads that I use, the wadding, to help it wrap nicely around my chest.
Once the pad stitching is done on both sides of the wadding, I attach the wadding to the cotton canvas interlining simply by fell stitching the top and the bottom. It doesn't need to be stitched all the way around. There's no need for it to be that secure. After that, all I need to do is sew together the back lining and the back outer fabric. This is definitely the easiest part of the whole project. I just need to line them up and stitch them together in a few places. This is also when I attach the back cinch, which is the buckle on the back of the vest that keeps it tight. I need to make sure that I leave the sides open between the lining and the outer fabric of the back so that we can start a process called bagging the vest. Now, bagging the vest is how we attach the back to the front. It's called bagging the vest because you have to stuff the outer front fabric in between the outer and lining back fabric, and then attach everything from there and sew it when it's basically inside out. This makes sure that none of the side seams are exposed and they're all tucked away on the inside of the fabric. Now, the tricky part about this is you need to make sure that all the corners are lined up properly. You need to make sure that every single layer of fabric is caught in between those pins before you stitch. Otherwise, there could either be gaps or holes in your fabric, or gathers and pinches and bunches where you don't want them, and it can make everything look sloppy. When I have both sides of the front fabric stuffed into the lining, I sew together the side seams and both shoulder seams. That's a lot of sewing to be done, and you're stitching through a lot of fabric, so you have to do it slowly and very carefully. As stressful as this part is, it really is the most rewarding, because this is one of the final big steps before you really start to see all of your work start to come together. And once this is done, we get into one of the most satisfying steps, and that's pulling out the waistcoat. This is, at the same time, both the most satisfying step and the scariest, because now is the only time I get to see whether or not I actually stitched all those seams correctly.
Once all that's done, all I need to do now is sew the buttonholes together. Now I don't have any thread that's really meant for sewing buttonholes. I do them by hand. That's the other historically accurate part that I can do. I don't like it though, because the thread that I use is just basic stitching thread, which means it's thin. And so it actually makes sewing buttonholes more difficult. A lot of the times, what they would use is a thick linen or silk thread, or they would use a corded thread that would look like a bit of thin yarn, even tightly wound yarn, and they would use that to stitch up their buttonholes. So I hand sewed all those buttonholes. I was originally going to do 3, but then I thought, well, maybe 4 would look good. And so I punched in 4 buttonholes and started stitching them. And then I realized, you know what? I could fit another one on here. And I didn't want to, because that would mean that I would have to sew 1 more buttonhole. But I took a look in the mirror, literally, and saw that it would look best with 5 buttons instead of 4. So I usually do 3. This time I did 5. And I'm really glad I did, because it really makes it look good in the end. And you'll see in the final reveal.
Before I stitch the buttonholes, I put a short basting thread around each one to make sure that all of those layers of fabric stay together while I'm sewing.
So I put the buttonholes on, and I put the buttons on. Putting the buttons on is usually really hard, but this time it worked really nicely, because that plaid literally acted as a grid pattern, so I could know exactly where to put each and every button. It was really nice. Once I finished putting on the buttons, I took a look around the entire vest and made sure there were no loose threads sticking out. I made sure that all the basting threads were gone and taken out. And then I gave it one last pressing on the old iron board, and I was done. And so, without further ado, what does that mean? Tell you what, I'll make another video on phrases like ado and other antiquated words that we still use for no reason at all. So without further ado, here's the vest. And there we have it. Here's the final vest. This now makes, I think, the 4th vest that I've made for myself in the past year or 2. I'm very, very happy with this one. I think this is so far the best one that I've made. It's comfortable, it's lightweight, the fabric pattern is beautiful. I'm really happy with it. And I hope you guys enjoyed getting the opportunity to see how I go about doing this. Yeah, it's been really good. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I will try to do more videos like this if you guys enjoy it. I would like to do more on YouTube. Here on YouTube, I can make videos that are as long as I want. So if you guys want more long form content from me, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know, and I will have another video up soon, hopefully, about something. I'll let you guys know. See you then.